Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we really get into it with the sources you give us. It's like a fast track to understanding, really focused on getting those insights for you without, like, getting lost in all the details.
Yeah, and today's interesting. We have this week in review for week 13 of 2025, and one of you shared this really in-depth personal log with us, which gives us a glimpse into things from sleep to coding to even what's going on in the garden.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it is just one person's week, but we want to look at it to see if we can find any takeaways, any interesting things that maybe might resonate with you, with your well-being and how you learn and grow. And we're going to start with the health stuff first. What do you think?
Well, what's interesting right off the bat is that the stated goal was 7 hours of sleep. And on average, that was achieved. But when we look a little bit deeper, you see some inconsistency in the sleep patterns. There were multiple sleep sessions on Monday, Thursday, and Saturday.
Oh, interesting.
So it might not have been as consolidated as the total hours might lead you to believe.
Makes sense, yeah.
And then you throw in a weekend heat wave and an eye infection, and suddenly those sleep goals are not as easy to achieve. So it just kind of highlights that maybe just focusing on the hours of sleep you get can be a little misleading. I mean, the quality matters too, right?
Totally. It's a trap we all fall into, right? You look at that number and you think, oh, I got enough sleep. But if it's broken up, it's not the same.
Yeah, you don't feel as rested.
No, exactly. So beyond sleep, the log also tracks those daily steps, which averaged 6,422.
Wow.
But the standard deviation was really high, which basically means that there was a lot of variation.
Yeah, some days were much more active than others.
Right. And what I thought was really cool was the deliberate effort to add in movement throughout the day, like walking around the neighborhood or even just doing the grocery shopping. It makes you think, are there any times in your day where you could slip in a little extra activity?
It all adds up, right?
Right. And I mean, I know for me, sometimes it feels like it's all or nothing.
Yeah.
Like either I'm doing a full workout or I'm just like on the couch. But this is like a good reminder that that's not the only way to do it.
It's about creating a more sustainable lifestyle, incorporating those things into your daily routine rather than just relying on dedicated workout sessions. It seems like that was a successful strategy for this person. Even though those daily steps went up and down, it was still consistent in terms of movement.
So speaking of consistency, they also mentioned maintaining a stable weight despite what they called a slightly inconsistent intermittent fasting window.
And their diet was roughly a 1:2 ratio of plants, protein, and carbs, with a mix of takeout and home-cooked meals. And they're also taking some regular supplements. So you get a sense of somebody who's really paying attention to their food choices.
It seems like they found a good balance,
Yeah.
right? And the fact that the weight was stable, even with the inconsistent fasting, I think, suggests that the overall calorie intake was probably the bigger factor.
Right. Makes sense. But it does make you wonder, I mean, could this inconsistency have had any other impacts that they weren't tracking, like maybe on their energy levels or their mood, even if it wasn't showing up on the scale?
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Something to think about, right?
Definitely.
Now, there's also a mention about a shift in their workout routine. Instead of those like really structured sessions, they're incorporating movement into everyday things like plastering, going for walks after meals, even just doing chores around the house.
I mean, that's how our ancestors stayed active, right? Just moving throughout their day.
Exactly. And they even specifically mention how good they felt, even just after like a quick walk or standing up after they ate.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like really encouraging. It's like you don't have to be training for a marathon to get benefits from moving your body.
Yeah. Sometimes we overcomplicate it, We think exercise has to be this huge thing.
Yeah.
But really just moving a little bit more throughout the day can make a big difference.
So now let's move from the physical stuff to the mental and emotional side of things. And it looks like they're continuing with their sitting meditation with different lengths of time and at different times of the day. So it seems like they're really flexible with their practice.
Yeah, finding those little pockets of time. Some days maybe they could fit in a longer session, other days maybe just a few breaths. But what's important is that they're doing it consistently.
And they're also doing walking meditations.
Yeah.
But they noted that it wasn't as mindful as the week before, especially when they were doing that plastering work.
Which makes sense. It's hard to stay present when you're focused on a task.
Oh, yeah, I can totally relate to that.
Mm.
It's like you start off with good intentions, but then your mind just wanders off.
It really shows the difference between that intentional mindfulness practice and just like being physically active while your mind is somewhere else.
Right, right. And then there's this really interesting note about how they were feeling really stoic, even though the weather was hot and humid. It's like they're just observing those feelings of discomfort, without letting them take over.
That's powerful. It makes you wonder, what if we all just observed our reactions more instead of getting so caught up in them?
Yeah. Because if you think about it, it's not the heat itself that's the problem. It's how we react to it.
Exactly. And by just observing those reactions, you create a space for a more, I don't know, a more measured response. It could be a good exercise for you to think about what your emotional triggers are and how you might be able to cultivate a similar sense of stoicism. So we've seen the internal well-being effort, but this week also had a lot of engagement with the outside world, with all those practical skills and hobbies.
Right. Like cooking, for example. They're focusing on quick and efficient veggie prep,
Mm.
making simple soups with veggies and eggs.
Hmm.
And they're still using those hard-boiled eggs to learn different egg recipes, which is a smart way to build up skills, one step at a time.
It's breaking it down into manageable chunks,
Yeah.
focusing on one thing like eggs and just mastering that. I love it.
And then we get to decluttering. And I
Hmm.
think this is where we can all relate. They did a good job cleaning the kitchen and the laundry, but there's a whole list of tasks that are still in progress.
It's the never-ending story, right?
Right. Plaster repair, the workspace, curtains, even like a neglected drawer and some paperwork. I mean, I'm sure everyone has a drawer like that.
Oh, definitely. I think this part really just highlights that decluttering isn't a one-time thing. It's a process, an ongoing thing.
It ebbs and flows, right?
Totally. And what's interesting is that they mentioned needing to do some plaster repair, which makes me think that sometimes when you're cleaning, you discover even more things that need to be done.
Oh, yeah, it's like one thing leads to another.
Exactly. It's all connected.
Now, for reading, it's a mix of practical and leisurely. They're taking their time with a book about managing hypertension, hyperglycemia, and hyperlipidemia, and then just skimming through some fiction for fun.
A little bit of both. I think it's great that they're taking it slow with the health book because it means they're really trying to understand the material, not just rushing through it.
Yeah, it's about quality over quantity, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the fiction is just a good way to relax and escape for a little bit.
Totally. And then we come to coding. Now, it might not sound like much, but they spent time on what they called trivial typo fixes and CI updates for
Mm.
some Elixir projects on GitHub. But, those little things can actually be really important, especially when you're working with a lot of other people.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, CI updates, those are all about automated testing
Right.
and making sure that the software runs smoothly, without any issues. And even those tiny typo fixes can prevent misunderstandings and bugs down the line. So those small contributions might not be glamorous, but they're the glue that holds a lot of these projects together.
Right. They're essential. And they also mentioned refactoring a personal Python project using a tool called Aider, which makes suggestions for improving the code. But they made a really insightful point about not just blindly accepting those suggestions.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah, because even though AI can be really helpful, you still need to be critical and make sure those changes actually make sense.
You don't want to lose sight of the learning process. I think that's a great takeaway for anyone who's working with code or any kind of AI-powered tool.
Definitely. Now, in terms of writing, they're keeping up with posts about gardening, fish keeping, and book notes, but no blogging about any interesting coding projects this week. So it seems like their focus shifts from week to week, depending on what they're into.
It's like a natural ebb and flow of creative energy. Some topics are just more compelling than others.
Yeah, makes sense. And fish keeping was mostly routine care. No new additions this week because they were busy painting.
Yeah, there's only so much time in a day.
Right. So when one thing gets more attention, something else has to take a backseat.
It's all about balance.
Now, gardening was a busy area this week. Clearing out neglected plants, propagating new ones from cuttings, starting those older seeds.
Spring is here.
It is. And there's that ongoing challenge of figuring out where to put all those seedlings in the front yard. Oh, and they even found a cheaper alternative for those little saucers that go under plant pots. So it's like a reminder that gardening is all about experimenting and problem solving.
It's not just about following instructions. It's about adapting to what you have and figuring things out.
Exactly. And lastly, photography. They discovered a really cool, inexpensive way to take better pictures of plants without needing a macro lens. And they're planning to write about it next week.
A little cliffhanger.
I know, right? Makes you curious to see what they came up with. So to wrap up this deep dive into week 13, it's a real look at how someone manages their day-to-day life. Trying to stay consistent with health goals even when things get in the way. Practicing mindfulness, exploring different interests.
It's relatable.
It is.
Mm.
And hopefully it's given you some ideas or some inspiration for your own life.
And if there's one thing to take away from all of this, I think it's that balancing act between striving for consistency, like with sleep and steps, and accepting that life is just going to throw you curveballs.
Yeah. Or maybe it's that resourceful approach to problem solving that we saw in the gardening and photography section.
Either way, it's about finding those small wins and celebrating them.
So we want to leave you with a question. What's one area in your life where you could make a small but consistent effort? Or maybe where you could get creative and solve a problem in a new way? It might just surprise you what you can achieve.
There you go.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
See ya.